Although a tape-based piece of music, its conception is rather different to the title theme. It has discrete musical motives, like the theme, but there is no actual looping. There is, however, overlaying of elements and a certain chopping up and reordering of elements in a mobile-like structure. The piece has 4 musical motives. First, a low piano note which sounds physically plucked or struck rather than played via key, combined with an ascending whoosh made of white noise. Second, a spooky 2-line, 2-bar phrase played, probably, by a radiophonic workshop keyboard. Third, a pitched drum sound, possibly based on a real instrument. Fourth, a soprano vocalizing wordless melodies. With these motives prepared, the piece is constructed as if it was cut and pasted together, perhaps literally, connecting one motive to another. In addition, the nature of the piece allows segments to be reused in several scenes throughout the story. The scenes with Victoria in the cave are near the beginning of episode 4, and from this comes the first sequence of the 3 motives, as it occurs in my arrangement. There's a musical extension heard just before the scene ends that I didn't use because it's very much like what happens in the next scene, so the repetition was unnecessary. After a scene with the doctor back at the base, we return to the cave where Victoria is pursued and captured by a warrior, but they are both caught in a fall of snow and ice. The rest of the piece comes from this longer scene. The first time we hear a part of this patchwork piece is actually in episode 3, where, as Victoria watches in horror, Jamie and scientist Arden are shot down by the warriors. We hear the opening measures as well as the drum motive here, with extensions edited in to fit the scene. Segments of this music are heard later in episode 4 and are all generally related to the ice cave setting. Further fragments are heard in 3 instances during the final episode. The 4 motives have little or no direct relation to one another. They do have a consistent tempo, but are without a consistent meter. I notated the music with 8th note-based time signatures, but the number of eighths in each measure varies wildly, completely dependent on each motive's natural meter. The white noise motive that begins the piece with a start is supported by a low E natural. And when I realized I could myself pluck the string inside the piano, the idea thrilled me. The logistics for this are as follows. I must silently depress the low E key before any notes are heard. Then depress the sostenuto pedal. That's the rarely used center pedal on some grand pianos that let ring only strings whose dampers were up at the time. That done, I reach in and pluck the E string. It turned out helpful that the damper of that note was always up, so it was easy for me to find the note to pluck quickly. The white noise itself is obviously unpitched, so how to realize that on the piano? This took some experimenting, but I knew I needed 2 basic things: a wide upward swipe of the hand, plus dissonant notes in relation to the E natural, giving the impression of noise. I chose pitches at the intervals of the tritone, B flat, the minor second, F, next door neighbor of E, the minor third, G, and the minor sixth, C, next door neighbor of B, the consonant perfect fifth. This first motive is given time to resonate. The E natural is intended to be constantly but subtly present throughout, so the sostenuto pedal is down the whole time. Many notes within the piece allow this E to vibrate in sympathy, so the E really is heard the entire time. The second motive is made of 2 middle register lines. The lower of the 2 is the melody, the upper note the harmony. Together, they give a slight suggestion of E major, but end with a dissonance of the notes surrounding E, D sharp and F. The two-bar phrase usually alternates 6 beats with 5 beats, but ends with 6. In the finished episode, it sounds like this alternation of meter is a function of tape editing, as the motive always repeats at least once with that rhythmic pattern. The white noise motive separates the second motive from the third drum motive. Again, realizing the drum motive on piano took some experimentation. Each of the 5 drum sounds have fairly specific pitches, unusually for drums, and I play these primary notes in the right hand. As I've done in the past, part of the drum's timbre on piano is made of super low register clusters. This time, I took care to give each of the drum sounds their own clusters, moving in the same direction but not perfectly parallel to the main drum pitch. Also worth noting is that I had to compose these clusters carefully since none of them could contain the note E, because I did not want to restrike that note. Certainly not a literal reproduction, but an effective drum sound. This is the end of the music from the first ice cave scene, and the rest of the music comes from the longer second scene. After a few beats of silence, permeated only by the E, the first motive restarts a repeat of the initial sequence, with one addition. The fourth motive, that's the soprano's voice, is played in octaves before the second motive resumes. The third sequence is where variations begin. It starts with the second motive rather than the first, with an added extra measure. Without pause, a single phrase of the drum motive is a shocking insertion. This happened so fast that, so I could perform it in tempo, the two-handed motive is given to the right hand alone at the last second to give the left hand time to reach down to play the clusters. Just as quickly, the right hand must reach up to play another instance of the soprano motive. A rhythmically extended version of the second motive, 8 and 6 beats, rather than 6 and 5, overlaps with a continuation and extension of the soprano motive. There are actually single drum hits underneath this passage in the episodes track that I could not physically achieve, save for the very last one to end the sequence. Another instance of the white noise motive restarts things. But now a surprising variation of the second motive. The 6-beat first rhythm is stretched in the extreme, almost 4 times as long. The 5-beat second rhythm is just over twice as long. Next, the soprano motive is heard at length, nearly mimicking the melodic line of the motive just heard. Particularly in this spot, the soprano slurs the pitch from note to note in the episode's track, but I omitted that as it would get too messy on the piano with the damper pedal ringing all the notes. After these several measures of near stasis, the white noise shocks us back into motion, leading to a final iteration of the drum motive. I allow for a deliberate moment of silence as part of the written music, and thus part of the performance. Thanks for sticking around and watching episode 11, part 2 of the Dudley Simpson is Doctor Who project. Subscribe, like, share, comment. See you next time.